Welcome all to another episode of Capturing the Intangibles. Today we're going to discuss how citizen development for software content is on a fast track to heighten expectations, and how the definition of building and engineering is not at all what it used to be. Fun little episode, and I hope you enjoy. All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Capturing the Intangibles. It's been a minute since we've done one of these. I feel like I barely know you guys anymore. Massimo, you just got back from Italy. How was Italy, man?
Oh, Italy was really good, and I had a lot of good food, and I can't wait to go back. But the good news is the US is opening November 8th, and guess what? Just November 9th, I'm on a plane to New York. So how is that possible? It just opens up, and boom, I'm on the plane traveling to the US. But I'm really looking forward to go and meet you guys and meet the team and do some good work on innovations and picking up some new projects that we want to do. So really looking forward for that.
Awesome. Yeah, it's funny how that works, right? Like as soon as the opportunity's there, everyone's calling you to show up somewhere. But hey, that's what you get for being popular, Massimo. Mike, how's it going up in Philly? Anything new in your life?
Man, it went from we're going stir crazy. I think all of us on the team, to now all of a sudden it's like, all right, do I really have to go and travel here? So all of a sudden now I've seen you guys twice in Prague in the last couple of months, right? I think you're going back yet again, Rick. What else do we have going on? We've got San Francisco, we've got Las Vegas coming up. So all of a sudden it went from no travel for the first 6 months to like last 3 months, last quarter is just constantly up and about. But otherwise, man, everything's pretty beautiful over here. It's the fall time. Weather's changing. Dogs are wearing sweaters. So it's that time of year again.
I didn't know your dogs were wearing clothes. You shouldn't be doing
They're very
that.
chilly. They're very chilly.
Oh, okay.
He's got those boutique dogs or something.
Yeah.
Did you pick up on that, Massimo? I think it was Mike's subtle way of saying he's really sick of seeing us. So
Yeah, I think so too. But
I'm sensitive.
The good news is he was talking about Las Vegas. We're also going to AWS reInvent, and I think that's a very, very good conference to see, to work with our partner on the latest cloud technologies. And I'm looking also forward to go there and see what can we do more with cloud technologies, and how can we apply to our platform. And really getting into 22, 23 and on latest and greatest innovations.
Yep. Awesome. Okay.
As far away from Georgia as possible. Go Dogs.
Hey, you said it though. So
I know.
Guys, all right. This is my one sports moment of the podcast this week. Okay. I don't know how much Massimo knows. Mike knows I'm a massive Atlanta Braves fan, and it comes in second to a massive Georgia Bulldogs fan. So, I mean, things are going good, but I'm as stressed out as I could possibly be right now. I just need this thing to end, and it needs to end with Atlanta being on top. We've seen it way too often that we get there and then we stumble and then it all comes crashing down. So please let this go right tonight. But I digress. Let's hop into a topic, guys. I'm kind of surprising you on this one a little bit. It's something that I kind of thought about, and it actually came about, Mike, in a discussion over a data fabric feature that we had recently over the last couple of weeks. And it's going to be around, let's call it platforms for builders being the new frontier. Okay. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of research, there's a lot of hype, there's a lot of, quite frankly, development going around everywhere within technology of low code, no code, just building in general. But I want to focus in on that word of platform for builders, or builders in general. And what does that mean? Because I think there's different definitions. So Massimo, let me start with you. I'm going to ask, what does a builder mean to you in terms of today, right? Like it may have been different 10 years from now, but for the market that we're starting to look at, what does builder mean to you?
Yeah, there are different definitions, and I'm 51, so I'm probably more the traditional developer. You add people that will code. You take any development environment. Depending on if you're doing Microsoft or Java or any other, you have a development environment. You go and code. You just go and code the whole thing. Then, of course, the world of 4GLs, where you do it more model driven or more less code and more modeling. came into even in the 90s, but then poses the problem that you were using a platform that built a lot of artifacts, but you couldn't really move on. You were stuck on, either you build code or you modeled it. At the end of the day, you were stuck on with old technology. You couldn't change it. You couldn't personalize, or the customers couldn't do anything. So the builder now, to me, it's actually a smart builder. It's more a person or a developer that really uses more modern tools, and it's more an assembler. It takes the best of all the technologies that you can have, and models the work, and the work could be just executing a flow or an automation, and or a user interface. And puts everything together, right? So think about that now. An architect that who builds a building really has all the artifacts to build the buildings and really make it operational and executing. So to me, that is the builder. But with the bigger difference that now I have the tools that are really working for the future. So if there is a change to the building, I can really accommodate that. I don't need to take away the building and then rebuild it again with a new technology. So it's future proof for the changes and the innovation. So for me, the builder is an assembler today.
Okay, yeah, it's you're kind of delineating between builder and building, and I want to talk about that for a second, because the builder, you're saying it's more process driven, more modelers. So does that mean the individual that is building, right, or is the builder, has that changed? Do you still consider a traditional software engineer a builder, or has that become someone different? Or is it going that direction? Is it a hype? What is it?
Yeah, I think there are different levels. So because I just put it here bluntly, in this blog, people talk about low code, right? And but then you are a developer and you say, well, if I use a low code, I'm not coding. So what's in it for me, right? What's in for me as a developer? If I'm not coding, I like to code actually. So if I use low code tools, then what's in it to me? So you have people building platform services or really basic services. These type of developers are really builders. They code, right? But then you have a high level builders where they take all the things that has happened in open source or are available from cloud providers or software providers, and they assemble that together as one solution. And then the next level is when it goes to partners or to customers, they will need to use the same tools as the assemblers, not the builders, because then they can build it or they can assemble and deploy and run the solution in a very safe and good way and future proof. So we are going to different levels. Going to developers or builders and say, go and use a low code, it could be difficult to get the adoption and the buy-in for those type of people or developers.
Yeah, I like that sort of how you're kind of gradually going from builder to assembler. Because at the end of the day, the end user thinks they're building something, but I like the fact that you're saying builder. To me, what I'm hearing from you is provides me a whole lot more flexibility and control of what I'm doing. It's kind of like the whole, I'm not an Android guy, but the whole iPhone versus Android, right? Like I have greater availability of tools for me to personalize this in ways that's important to me. But I do think the market's pushing that up the scale a little bit more towards assemblers because they want to democratize all these different things, right?
Exactly.
But Mike, let me come to you because we've talked about builder. Let's get into the content a little bit, if you don't mind, or if you have something on builder, by all means. But we said builder versus what is being built or building. What do you think of if we say a platform for building? Do you just think apps, or do you think something different? What is that content? What is that it?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because I think the first question that you asked Massimo, and I totally agree with Massimo's point of view on builder, right? You're having to wear that sort of project foreman hat where you're looking at what outcome do you want for the business, not what technical feature do you want to deliver for a product or a project, right? So if you're looking at it very myopically, you're not really satisfying or moving the business forward. But when you talk about things like platform, or maybe a more common word that people think about is ecosystem, right? When you start thinking about ecosystem, then the selection criteria becomes much more broad. How you're trying to solve for the business needs, so things like single sign-on, authentication, security, all these things, that comes as part of the ecosystem package, right? So as a builder, you're not simply selecting for, oh, do I want Node.js versus, some other technology platform, or React here, or what have you, but rather you're looking at what is going to give you the most horizontal value that you can then build your foundation up on, rather than looking at sort of narrow, myopic outcomes. And so it's definitely an interesting question, where I think you're pushing a lot more responsibility on those conventional builders to have to become much more aware of their technology selection, right? Because they can't just think about what is my job here. They have to think about the broader context of what is our business trying to achieve here. So I think more and more that means selecting not just for, like, on an RFP, does your product do this? Does your product do that? No, because a lot of best of breed products, a lot of individual technology products can achieve those things. But when it all works in concert together, that's where you get that sort of multiplier effect, that network value that you can then start building and kind of accelerating that development process on top of. So I think that's where a lot of the responsibilities are growing for the conventional sort of builder personas.
Maybe let's give an example. So think about building an AI solution, an AI app, right? Or an AI, solution for a certain industry. So are you a builder or are you an assembler, right? So and I think for these things where Mike says you need single sign-on, you need an API, you need you train the model, you need the data, so you need a data platform. You need maybe to bring the data into some data platform. So that's why in that use case, you are more an assembler, because you're using heterogeneous technologies that are coming together into one solution. And at the end of the day, then your AI app could be predicting, maintenance, or predicting pricing for, or predicting how long does it take to submit this purchase order, right? So you are more an assembler, because you're taking essentially different technologies that you need into one solution. And that's why, and the builder is where, if you build an AI engine, or you build some business logic for storing data, then you're really coding, and that's the builder, right? So that's why the elevation of these low code platforms is at the assembler level, because you need quickly to assemble things together, right? And then when you do it, you want the partners and the customer doing at the same speed, but with the same value, with the same security, and with the same reusability.
Yeah, I want to come back to the actual content in just a second here, Mike, because I do have an example that I want to give that you and I discussed a couple weeks ago. But it makes me think we're really describing or having the conversation of what is the market. Because I think all three of us and everyone on our teams, everyone that we work with, have gone through the debate of, Mike, what you brought up, technical features versus what I heard as outcomes, right? So it's going between building to assembling to just give me something out of the box, right? And I think for a while there wasn't an in between, and now you're seeing a lot of market development in that assembler market. But then what happens when we go to prospects and customers and we hear a different thing almost seemingly everywhere we go? We go to one customer that's a bit more technical and really flexible in what they want to do. They want more ownership. Well, they're going to stay on the builder side. So you have to provide those types of tool sets that give them the flexibility they need. But then I would argue maybe a larger majority of the organizations maybe are still a little bit more focused on speed and efficiency with less IT overhead. So assembly is their only way to go. So maybe you give me your feedback here, but it seems like how we're defining the market, it can't always be low-no code, right? It's got to run the gamut, perhaps, to say, if you're going to go after this market aggressively, unless you're going to be, SMB focused with, IT departments of less than 10 people, whatever. Well, okay, that's your market. But if you want to expand it to others, you're going to have to go outside of that, and you're going to have to go all the way from, hey, we provide scripting capabilities, all the way to, hey, here's your template to build this net new application, drag and drop, boom, you're off and going, right? But that's how I interpreted what you guys are saying. And correct me if I'm wrong. Do you feel that way, or is it different?
Yeah, because think about it. If you're a business, is your IP in how you run the business, or is it in the tools and technology and owning the architecture that does run the business? And I would argue it's the former. So I want to have tools that allow me to code and develop solutions that run my business, that I can simply translate the physical space into what the software is intended to do, whether that's RPA, low code, AI, machine learning, what have you. I don't want to have to build all that architecture, because that's not IP for me. That's not a competency that, if I'm in the manufacturing, if I'm in food and beverage, that I need to own how something is being done or executed in the back end. Rather, I want to take products and platforms, and I want to build specifically how to run my business on top of that. So I think also it's an evaluation of, like, what is the IP that a company and a decision maker should actually be owning itself, right? And not fooling themselves into thinking, well, in order to develop this IP, I actually need to build out all the building blocks to get to that stage, right? Because you're always going to be chasing the next cool technology. You're going to be assuming a lot more of a headache when it comes to the management of that platform capability. And it's the classic. At the end of the day, this is 21st century build versus buy, right? Now we're just talking about cloud and managed services, but it's really largely the same argument in a lot of cases.
Yeah, and then I would add a new term, because people talk about for years build and buy, build, assemble, and buy. So I think the new thing is there. The problem is what you see, which is not different than 20 years ago, but still is now in the assembly as well, that a lot of cloud provider provides, nice tools, to do small apps or small extensions. The problem is that I hate really governance. I don't. The governance is really like, I'm thinking about house cards and governance and politics and all of that. But the thing is that at the end of the day, every single company have all kinds of tiny apps built with whatever low code functionality. The big problem is that the IP that, Mike, you were talking about is not really captured fundamentally at the center of the core business processes. So I got my core business processes, and that comes from a vendor, right? And then you have all kinds of people building all type of apps and generating data and doing all things, but they are not connected. So my recommendation is, when you do build or assemble or buy, but when you assemble, really put a little bit more control and use actually the tools that are together with your core business applications. And because the data that will be captured with the extensions is going to be part of the integral business process, and it's going to be your IP as well. If you do with other tools, they were never going to be integrated. And there you go. You have island of applications, but then in the cloud, you just move the problem to the cloud, right? I know of a lot of customers have thousands of extensions using, Microsoft tools in the cloud or Google tools in the cloud. That makes no sense at all. So stick with where the core business process is and use those tools to add value.
On that note, I mean, I don't know. Let me explore if this metaphor works over here. But it's a lot like building a house, right? So you have two options if you're ready to move into a house. You can build something purpose built, fit to your family, fit to your specific needs. But that's going to take you 12 to 18 months. It's going to take a lot of capital, but you're going to get exactly what you want. But if you look at Zillow, if you look at house buying property websites, you can find something that matches 80 to 90% of what matches your lifestyle, your personal needs, and that gives you an opportunity to step into accelerating those life goals, moving a family, whether it's cross country or to a bigger house or whatever that might be. And there may be more value in being able to execute that vision or that next stage of your life than simply spending the next 18 months in a very capital intensive project where you're having to make so many decisions about how do you want to run your home life and everything like that. And I think there's a lot of transitive, there's a corollary here in that, yeah, it's very much like a lot of people could simply build a house. I mean, you look at the housing market today, it's crazy to go out there and buy a house. We're at the top of the market right now. And yet people still, rather than wanting to build their own custom properties because that takes time, that's pretty big in terms of an emotional investment and technical investment. People want to find ready to go properties that they can just already imagine themselves sitting in there, right? Because then they get to recognize and realize like the rest of their lives in that property. So like I said,
This is
testing that
exactly
metaphor,
between
it
me
was
and my
okay.
wife. I just want to buy something that exists. She wants to build a house. So this is exactly the fights we are having at home, Mike. How do you know? You know?
But it's weird because the persona Massimo takes on when it comes to building a house is the exact opposite from
Exactly.
him as an engineer.
Exactly.
So it's
I play
it's
safe on
really
that.
interesting. So yeah, so I actually like the metaphor, Mike, because I wrote down like these platform for builders, or these platforms should be about boosting existing or desired process, or in your metaphor, lifestyle, right? Process lifestyle is kind of not defining that business process or that company's IP. It's all about boosting it and how can we make this incrementally better based on how we feel as a company we should be heading, or as a lifestyle we should be heading. But let's go back to content for just a second. And this is why I wanted to bring this up, Mike. It's very easy and simple to say, I've got to build this extension, I've got to build this widget for some sort of calculation, or an in-context app for recommendations. Not easy to build or deploy per se, but it's conceptually, as a builder, that's what we want to do. But there's a lot of content that I consider builder too. Massimo, you brought up assembly. I think of, okay, I want to build a new workflow or an extension to a workflow to incorporate some sort of AI process or recommendation, or to, getting into process intelligence. We talked about this a few weeks ago, to auto approve some things that are 99.99% always going to happen anyways. Why spend 30 minutes of my day going through this typical thing? Let's bypass it. But Mike, we started talking the other day about how in the metagraph concept or actually, let me step back, when we were doing saved views, right, within the data fabric application. And I brought to you the question, well, shouldn't we be able to create a saved view from the start? Like the logical workflow of me, someone who doesn't have a ton of database experience, right? I come from the process of, I would like to assemble something, versus when I asked you about it and everyone was like, no. The way that DBs or DB admins are going to want to interact with this is their workflow is kind of backwards, completely the opposite. And then it clicked for him. He's like, oh, well, that's why that's built that way. But I bring that up because to me, that's another example of building content, right? It's not necessarily applications, but are there other examples of that across, it doesn't have to be our platform, it could be anywhere in technology, that you would consider a building content?
I mean, that's low code, right? So I've got APIs. We've been 5 years past, like, every single product has 10, 20, 1,000 APIs, depending on the product, to do every little micro transaction within that product space and product domain. So you got all these services, but unless you're a technical user that's about to start coding your own, React app and calling these APIs to create experiences, what does an API really give you for functional users today, right? And I think low code, no code kind of fits into that model, where, it's not about low code, no code. I don't think if you give a tool like that to a user, they're going to say like, oh, this is a great low code, no code tool, or compare it to other things that they've used. They're just going to be like, wow, this is really fun to drag and drop this interface here. And oh yeah, let's get this customer list and design this like cool little widget, and job done. They will be completely blinded to all the complex technical debt capabilities, deliveries upstream of that. But what we've done is provided this abstraction to them. So that example that you gave about Metagraph, I know I can teach you how to create, things like database views, store procedures, what have you. But if you don't use that skill for like a month, right, Rick, you don't live in data systems. So you're going to forget about it. It's going to look familiar when someone shows it to you, but you're going to be like, oh, wait, I forgot this one step over here, right? You get something like Metagraph that completely abstracts this, and it provides you a visual medium for how data is organized, collated, coalesced. And then from that, I can quickly create a view where we've completely hidden and abstracted the entire technical steps. Now you're focused on the outcome rather than the process itself. And we've made that process a lot easier to use. But I think low code is pretty much, not to harp on low code, no code, but I think that is like 100% matching up exactly what you're asking
Absolutely.
for here, right?
Yeah, it feels like everything needs an assembly component, right? It doesn't matter how technical it is today, it's going to move towards needing this sort of assembly market. We've done it with workflows, we've done it with queries. Now we're even looking at it from like back end logic. How do we get that in, even into an assembly type mechanism? But Massimo, what's the overall value in that you see? What's the value to an end customer, or how would you say a customer needs to understand that flexibility to be an assembler, even with those very technical things, is important for their business?
The thing that I'm actually very excited that we have actually what we have done in our design, what I really love, the team did a fantastic work, is to preserve the upgrades, right? So meaning I have done this all, I have assembled all this solution and I've built it in such a way that now I can deploy to my end users. Partners and customers may have added it, and then we come with a new version, and the solution keeps working. And actually, you can start also to take advantages of the new functionality that we have added in the low code, right? What you see normally is that people will build throwaway things, meaning I'm low code something, and then I use it for 1 year, and then all of a sudden the vendor of a low code tools, they come and say, oh, we figured it out, what we have done last 2-3 years was wrong, we're coming with a new framework. Oh, guess what, you have to redo everything. Those days are gone, right? So and even the core companies that provide low code capabilities, even the cloud providers, have done this for the last 10 years. They bring you a new framework, a new low code, and then you invest a lot of IP in that, and then in 3 years you find out that they just don't support it, it's obsolete. You cannot do that, right? So you cannot do it anymore. And so as you go, we will modernize, and upgrade the low code environment and all the others, and then your extensions, your IP is actually kept, modern and current. And that's what I really like of those frameworks. That's why I would use it immediately, instead of having my IT or my developers and go build something that is already, as you compile, well, in low code you don't compile, but as you save it essentially, or auto save it, you already created legacy. It's legacy code there, because the vendor is going to come to you and say, oh, good that you have done it, but you have to throw it away and do it immediately. That's no value to customers.
Right.
You can't say that anymore. And unfortunately, there are still frameworks out there that they do that.
Yeah, there's a huge sustainability factor there. No doubt about it. It's a really good comment. One thing that I would say too, back to what Mike kind of brought up earlier, which was the IP being in the business process, right? And how do we boost those sort of things? I think it's almost like getting users and businesses and organizations to understand that. I know you guys have heard me say this before, but I hate being all in sometimes on this whole out of the box notion, because when you do that, you're almost trying to say that there isn't IP in your business process, right? When taken to extremes. So if you break that down and you look at that content, it's not necessarily like the app, right? It's the logic, it's the queries, it's the workflows, it's the augmentations that you have to do, that you either aspire to do because it supports your existing business process, or as a part of your business process today, you have to have the ability in those systems to go in and tweak those. That's why you see, or at least from our perspective, we believe that we need to have assembler markets for all of those in one single platform, because then it's very sustainable, very easy to manage, and you need that sort of flexibility, not just you're a platform for builders. Great, we can build our own net new apps, and that's the only need. No. There's so much more usage that you as a business should get out of that to support your existing business process. And I think making sure that everyone understands they need that level of granularity and the value of that is really what the market's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think about you're building an app and your query was list open orders, right? What if now you say, well, I have a data lake platform, instead of creating my own database of list open orders, maybe I want to query the data lake because I get the open orders of all the platform and applications connected to the data lake. Well, you really want to assemble that. You want just to go and point to the data lake and do the same query, and then be able to get now the entire ecosystem of open orders, right? This is really what you want to do. It's not like a big refactor, a big, coding exercise. But think about moving off a report that report your silo to a report that now reports the data lake. And we can go with multiple more, kind of exercise of examples as well.
Yeah, awesome. Bringing it back to the metaphor, because you brought up out of the box and content as well, Rick. To me, that's like if I'm going to go and bringing it back to the metaphor that we talked about earlier. If I'm house hunting, what am I going to be more inclined to see myself and picture myself sitting on the sofa? A completely empty house with white walls, or a staged house with a sofa, with couches, with coffee tables, with beds, right? Yeah, it's not to my taste. This is not how I decorate the place, but this gives me a sense of, can you see yourself here? And so in the same way, I think it makes it much more appetizing and appealing to someone that walks in that door to say, oh yeah, like I can absolutely, like I'll redesign the pieces, we'll move in our own furniture, but I could picture me living in this space right here. Whereas you walk into an empty room, it's four white walls in a box, right? And so in the same way, I think that's what content really means. It's not that this gets, from an out of the box perspective. I think this is giving you a staged workspace to understand, can you see yourself modeling your business in this environment?
Yeah, and it's an accelerator, Mike, right? So actually, I like your example because a lot of top executives don't understand from their IT that when they go in an empty house, they go and spend a lot of money to stage, to put, all the furnitures and everything what they need, right? And they don't understand that getting a staged house that maybe, be 80% or 90%, it's actually much cheaper, and then adjust in such a way that it will work for you instead of going in an empty house and have all your IT guys and go and stage and really having, budgets and pricing and choosing all different technologies and then stitching everything together. Every room is different than the other room and the kitchen doesn't work and it's not connected. A lot of top executives don't understand that exercise is so much costly that I have a staged house. So I really like your example. That really gives a very, very good view of how selection should be done, right? And the low code should be able to give you that 20% that you're missing. So you have 80% and you say, it's not really, I want to change maybe 10%. Low code helps you to do that because then you can quickly adjust a couple of things that you don't like for yourself.
But I think it also changes everything, right? Because I don't think people should be going out there and saying, here's my RFP. I want a low code, no code platform, because that's not outcome driven. That is tactical. That delivers a very narrow set of things, right? So I think increasingly, for better or worse, the whole industry and market, I listen to a lot of like stratechery with Ben Thompson. They talk a lot about aggregation theory. Companies like Facebook, they own everything from WhatsApp to Instagram to Oculus to, now they renamed to Meta. So they own a lot of these different domains and silos, and they're vertically integrating in a very unique way. And increasingly, like, yeah, you might be selecting for something like VR today, right, for a Christmas present, but you're also buying into a platform, and you need to think about the consequences of that decision, good and bad, right? So you might be wanting to solve for, say, something like, making your kid happy and getting them a VR headset, but maybe you don't want to be embedded into the Facebook ecosystem, the platform, right? Or vice versa. Maybe you see, hey, there's a lot of benefits and a lot of virtues of having this really harmonious experience between all these services that otherwise would be effectively best of breed, right? Like you're solving all these problems independent of one another, and you're spending all your labor and your time and your capital on stitching these things together. Where's the value, right? There's no value.
Exactly.
In that.
Yeah, it's the buying patterns. I agree with you, Mike. It's going to have to get more progressive in what you consider. Because back to your house example, I may go in and I want to again, using our terms, assemble the house a little bit differently. Like I want to move the couches. I want to make sure my electronics are on this wall or whatever. Right? Those are little bit more tactical things that we can get done fairly quickly. But when buying a home, I may have, something I might perceive as small, like I want to expand the kitchen and have this open floor concept. Do I have to consider that I have to take down this wall? And that may be a really true builder component. Am I going to be able to do that in the future? Am I locked into this, right? So maybe an extreme, but hey, I think that's definitely where we're getting with software. It's more progressive, right? But yeah, it's a really interesting concept. Guys, I really appreciate the time. It's been really good to get back together again, even though Massimo Mike is apparently tired of seeing us, but that's fine.
I think so too.
I can't wait until Vegas, boys.
We'll get back together soon, but guys, I really appreciate it, and we'll see you next time.
All right. See you guys.
See you.